Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be looking at a new patch that's going to be used for the players of the Overwatch League for the end of season playoffs for Season 2. First I'm going to go through all the patch changes, talk a bit about potential meta changes we're going to see. Then I'm going to go through all the teams and try to put some personal expectations on the performance of individual teams in playoffs. Who's going to be powerhouses, who's not going to be, who's going to perform better than the regular season, and who's going to perform worse. Let's start with the patch notes. First up, a big change, global ultimate cost increased by 12%. This just means ultimate's going to be up less than before, and I think a big reason we're seeing that now is because of how many high impact ultimates we're seeing. So when we're playing Mei, Reaper, comps, which has been what most people have played for now, Mei, Reaper, Mei, Hanzo, where Mei ults have been kind of like EMP used to be, with being a secured instant fight win. I don't think this is going to be like a significant change other than that we're going to see less ultimates. So it's going to be more rotations, we're going to see more setups, we're going to see more off-angling, we're going to see more strategy outside of ult economy, which to me is really, really interesting. And also ult economy becomes significantly more important. Not important as in it changes the meta, but important that if you mess up your ult economy, you get punished much harder than you currently do. Slowing effects. Instead of stacking together, friendly and hostile slowing effects are now separate, and movement speed will be determined whichever is slower. This change will probably have an effect on how booping works. If someone is moving slower, they used to get booped shorter, which I guess what they're doing now is that they're going to be booped the same distance no matter how fast or slow they're moving, which is going to bring much more consistency to booping in general. And it makes sense that they're adding this at the same time as Reinhardt is getting his 30% boop reduction, because Reinhardt is close to impossible to boop with this reduction on it, plus this that he only holds shield, he reduced movement speed, so reduced boop distance. So I guess we are seeing this change because of that change to Rein, but I think it's a really good all-over change for consistency. Based on bugs where full damage was not dealt by abilities that rapidly gain loose targets such as fast tracking with Zarya and Symmetra's primary firebeams. This is strange to me that they're doing this, because from what we've seen so far and what is expected to be the meta, we're going to go through that as well during the patch notes. Symmetra is already really, really strong, so the fact that they increase her damage in a way seems strange to me. But okay, let's go through the heroes. Ashe. Reload time per round decreased from 0.3 to 0.25. This fixed one of the really big issues with Ashe. The reason Ashe is not that much played, for one, she's outclassed by Widowmaker and Hanzo. Hanzo's better shield break, so she's a worse Hanzo, and Widowmaker outscales her in range duels without shields, so she's also a worse Widowmaker. She's a better Hanzo than Widowmaker and a better Widowmaker than Hanzo, if that makes sense. But she still has that issue of an incredibly long DPS downtime. The idea of a DPS downtime is a period of time in which your character can no longer deal damage. A lot of characters have this, like Doomfist. Doomfist without cooldowns has a DPS downtime of 4 to 6 seconds depending on how you use your abilities. Ashe will used to have everything from 3 till 1 second DPS downtime and reloading depending on how many shots she shot. So it's just a matter of when is the character dealing damage, when is there significant windows where the character is not dealing damage, that's called DPS downtime and DPS uptime. So here's a big change, Brigitte. Brigitte's getting basically a full rework. I really like these changes. These are really good. So they're moving her more towards being a healer rather than a tank DPS support who could do everything. So self-healing from Aspire now halved. This is big. This is going to be much easier to punish Brigitte. She's going to be much more easy to kill. And so I guess it's halved from this number, 130, rather than half from 100. I think so, at least. But the fact that the healing is increased to 130 over the same duration makes her much more viable as a healer together with Lucio. A big problem with running Brigitte in a 2-2 locked meta is that she requires Lucio to work to close in on targets to proc her Inspire. I think this might be viable. I'll come back to this later why I think this, but I think Brigitte might find a place in playoffs meta. This change is also very significant in Whipshot, and the reason for this is it's way, way, way easier to hit it. And when it's easier to hit it, you're going to proc more Inspire without having to get close to the enemy team. Not being as close means it's hard to get punished even if you're more punchable because of lower self-heal. So I think that's a really good change to Whipshot. Barrier shield reduced from 500 to 200, thank god. That is an amazing change as well. I really like the way this is going. Shield bash stun duration reduced and ultimate cost increased. So what they're doing with Brigitte is they're making her a healer. However, they kind of removed, like, the idea of Brigitte when she was released was that she's going to be an anti-dive hero. But I don't feel she fulfills that anymore. She's too easy to dive, she's too easy to kill, she doesn't have enough significant peel. She's slightly better against Winston because the whip shot change and better against ball because Whip just changed. But all over, like the barrier health reducement and the self-healing from Inspire's Hop is going to make her less of a threat to dive comps. I do, however, think we can see her in certain dive comps, but again, come back to that later. D.Va, Comac, pilot ultimate cost reduced by 12%. It's quality of life changed to match the general change of ultimate cost being increased, so D.Va uses as long to get back into mech. It's just, you would be sitting a lot without mech if this wasn't the case. This is fair. Okay, this is a super underrated change. Quick melee no longer pauses ammo reload. This is going to significantly increase the Doomfist's ability to deal damage. You no longer need to be afraid of using your melee to finish your targets in event of not being able to reload, and you will always have the ability to deal damage in some sort. It's not going to be like you deal 195 damage or whatever, and if you melee him, you're going to die because you can't actually shoot at anything afterwards. Or if he, let's say you deal 150 damage but you have no ammo left, you can melee twice, and you're still going to recharge your shots. So this is just going to be like a quality of life change for Doomfist, where he's going to have a bigger, like better DPS uptime in fights. And I think that's going to significantly improve his ability to full commit into the beginning phases of the fight. It's much less needed for you to recharge all your abilities and wait for all your shots. It's going to take a higher DPS uptime. And so, Storm Arrow's ammo reduced from 6 to 5. I think this change is significant enough to push him out of the meta. The reason you would play Hanzo over Widowmaker or Reaper or Symmetra was because long-range shield damage caused by Storm Arrows. It's still there, but it's not as significant anymore, and I think Symmetra shield damage just outvalues it. And the lag of that last shot might be enough, especially with the introduction of Sigma, which we're also going to talk about, will be significant enough to stop Hanzo from being played at all. And I think we're going to see Symmetra instead. We're going to replace Hanzo in most comps. Orisa, protected barrier cooldown increased from 8 seconds to 9. I think this is enough to push Orisa out of the meta as a single shield tank. It's now so feasible to break the barrier that you will not be able to stand and hold your ground in the same way you used to. It's 1 second, which is not a lot, but it accumulates over time to being a lot of seconds for every shield. Sombra, hack, duration of enemy players reduced from 6 to 5 seconds, activation time increased, so it's easier to cancel and doesn't last as long as less oppressive. That's a good change. Sombra was just unfun to play against, and required a lot of discipline to play against. She still requires discipline to play against, but she is less unfun. And the problem with Sombra inherently is she's not that fun to watch for the viewers, and she's very much not fun to play against for the players. Because anything that just denies you of doing anything is not fun. It's an anti-fun hero. So this is just making her less anti-fun, which is good. Symmetra. These changes are important, so we're going to go a bit slower than the rest. Teleporter now lasts an infinite duration until destroyed, which means that it can get destroyed like normal, but it can also be removed by Symmetra herself. Okay, cooldown now starts when Teleporter is destroyed, which is also significant, because it means that if you place it up and it gets destroyed, the cooldown is going to be longer. It just means that. Maximum range increased, which means you can do so many more fancy. There's always these small spots where you're slightly too far out of range to use your TP before, which meant that some Bastion comps and some other defense comps had struggles playing with the Symmetra because the range of the TP wasn't enough. Teleport is destroyed if the entrance is more than 40 meters from the exit. You can no longer place your Symmetra thing on moving platforms, which is also a really good change. So why does this matter? Well, it allows you to use it like for stagger fights. If you're going to have an engage close to a choke, you can now place your TP towards your spawn and you will have a shorter respawn time. You can set up to have a movement between high grounds outside of enemy LOS, and it's much easier for you to like confuse and split the enemy team because you no longer need to actually peek the enemy team to get through a choke for a lot of maps like Hanamura. We remember Chengdu doing the TP into the right side and then from right side to point, which meant they never LOS the enemy team, which was really, really smart. Tracer pulse bomb damage increased from 300 to 350. It's a pretty good change. It's again going to be punishing against tanks. That's good. Wrecking Ball, Minefield increased projectile speed from... This is a big nerf to Wrecking Ball. Hammond. And the reason is that the mines when you ult is going to be spread further out. So let's just quickly go through. So I think Ashe is better. Not good enough. I think Brigida has changed significantly and doesn't really fill the same role that she used to at all. At least not from my perspective. D.Va, this is just like, it's a good change. Doomfist, a pretty big buff. Hanzo is a pretty big nerf, enough to probably push him out of the meta. Orisa is a pretty significant nerf. Every single nerf to a barrier is an indirect buff to every other barrier in the game. So every time a barrier hero is nerfed, or shield hero, every other shield hero gets better, as long as it's a shield getting nerfed. Reinhardt, steadfast reduced knockback effects, which is a good change. I think it's needed. And I also think that it was needed to add the general change, where if a target is moving slower, the boop distance doesn't change for increased consistency. I think that's a good change for Reinhardt. Sombra is a good change. It's quality of life, makes her less oppressive. Symmetra, interesting. I would like to see how this works out, but I think it seems really, really strong still. Tracer, I think this is enough to maybe push her back into the meta, and I'm gonna explain properly why. Okay, new hero, Sigma. Sigma's been in comp for a while now. We haven't seen him in any professional play. We're going to see him in Contenders playoffs, we're going to see him in OWL playoffs, and like immediately where I think everyone's mind is going to go is Double Shield. Double Shield Sigma. Sigma has the ability to replace his shield, which means that flanks become much less of an option, as Sigma can just deny a flank pressing right click. It's the same as you don't need to actually kill him, you just need to pressure the flanker, and they can never do anything, and then the enemy tank line will just die because they're one man down, because there's someone on the flank. If a team is playing shield bomb into you, Sigma's shield 1500 HP, you're going to use that to make sure that your Orisa shield is up all the time. So you're going to use a bit of Sigma shield, and then you're going to use Orisa shield is going to be placed, then you use Sigma shield. Sigma drops the shield after a bit, starts recharging it, Orisa shield, Sigma shield, and then you can shield for practically forever. If you have good shield management, your shield should hardly ever drop. That's the number one comp, the Double Shield Sigma. What else would you play with that? I probably think you play Symmetra. Symmetra synergizes well with the heroes in the comp. Adding mobility for Sigma with the teleporter is really good. He's a really slow hero, so is Orisa. And I think you'd play Mei, because Mei is a ridiculously strong hero, ability to change the structure of the map to something that favors you more. I think Symmetra Mei is likely the heroes we're going to see with Double Shield. For supports, a bit more different. It depends on what you want to play as. Because of the amount of shields, I don't know if playing shield break supports, like Baptiste Ana or San Baptiste, is as viable, and I think it's going to be a bigger nerf to heroes who deny picks. If you mess up your shield management, like Mercy, or can deny off angle, like if you get picked by an off angle, Sigma shields it, you get picked, you res it. I think Mercy might be better. I think Baptiste is still good. Baptiste is a really good hero, but I think Sen is going to pull out a lot. I don't see how he's going to be able to farm his Transcendence ever. He's never going to be able to get discards out, he's never going to be able to get value from his Harmony. He's not going to have a lot of chances because of increased cost, and he's going to deal way less damage. So, but with the Double Shield, I think Lucio Moira, which is the same that we saw together with the Reaper Mei, or we're going to see a Baptiste Ana like we saw with the Hanzo. It depends on how you want to play it, but I probably think Lucio Moira is the most likely choice of heroes, because Moira kind of ignores barriers and allows you to push even with a slow composition. So, that is what everyone thinks is going to be meta. And I think it's very likely that's going to be what most teams play, but I would like to propose a different composition to you. In these buffs, there's a few hidden buffs. First off, there's our Tracer. Pulse Bomb damage increase. It's 50 more damage than the Pulse Bomb, easier to kill tanks, Sigma's 400 HP, which means that you can probably one-shot him through Trance, for example, or infinite amount of healing. It's a really good against Sigma, specifically, because it matches up very well with his health pool. I think the Doomfist nerf is significant enough that his DPS uptime is higher, but also Doomfist is really, really, really good into Sigma, and we've seen teams like San Francisco Shock play a lot of Doomfist already into the Orisa Hog compositions of Orisa D.Va, and I think Doomfist is amazing into Sigma, so I think Doomfist is going to see a lot of playtime. So those two DPS I think can be played, but what do you play with them? Because D.Va gets very punished by Sigma, and Orisa Ball gets super punished. So there used to be this composition when Brig was just released to the game, which was in theory an anti-dive composition, which was very good in neutral fights against Bunker as well, in which you played Winston D.Va, Doomfist Tracer, Lucio Brigida, and it would just ruin any dive, and it would be really good on stopping slow composition from taking space. And the reason is just a very quick composition which collapses on the enemy team. And I think these Brigida changes really fit that playstyle because of how armor synergizes really, really, really well with building shields, like Doomfist. So you would trade a little bit of shield and some armor from the Brig pack, you would take less damage per shot and propel it, and you'd be able to armor pack your Tracer, your Doomfist, your Winston when they dove in. And then you would have this core of Lucio, Sigma, and Brigida running at the enemy team, which means you had a flanker and a tank from one side, a flanker from a different side, and a Sigma, Lucio, and Brig running from the front. If you're able to set up that kind of dive, I think you can just run through the enemy team, and it's really good against Symmetra comps. It's a lot worse against Reaper comps, but if you can force them to play Reaper, it's not a lot of changes for you to play the Symmetra comp, which just inherently beat Reaper on this patch, because they're not able to push through your shield because you have so many, and you have Sigma. So I think it's a good comp to force them off Symmetra, so it's going to be a good comp for Koth maps. Potentially also on defense for 2CP and Hybrid, but I don't think we're going to see it on Payload. But I really hope we're going to see some variation of Winston, Doomfist, Tracer, who are all much better into Sigma now. And I think if you're going to beat the double shield, going a kind of weird dive comp with burst damage is the way to go. Now that we talked about this, let's see which teams do we think are going to play which style. Let's start with the playoffs cutoff for play-ins. Chengdu Hunters. Well, we know Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu Hunters does what Chengdu Hunter does best, which is whatever they want and feel like at the time. Chengdu has good Pharah players. Maybe they're going to try to play some Pharah Doom stuff, which is kind of the same concept as playing the Doom Tracer dive comp, and also the same concept as playing the Shield Spam comp. It's just you have the option to push in, you have AoE, you have burst damage, which is instead of the consistent Symmetra damage or the consistent Hanzo damage, you would have the burst damage of the Reaper and Doomfist to make quick plays. And the reason I think this comp would be good is because of how good Sigma is how good Doomfist is into Sigma. I think we can see something like Pharah Doomfist coming out from Chengdu, very potentially. Same for Shanghai Dragons. I think both of these teams, Doomfist, Pharah, it's stuff they know how to play, they enjoy to play it, Jinmu and Ding, and I would be very surprised if DM is not hard grinding Sigma. So we would probably see Shanghai Dragons take out Envy, play Ding on Pharah, Jinmu on Doomfist, and they would play DM on Sigma. Because we see Envy play a lot now, and we saw them try to play with, it was one match where they played with DM instead of Envy. I'm theorizing that they might actually just put DM and be like, hey, you, we are pretty much secured getting into the play-ins. We want you to hard grind Sigma, and I think a lot of teams have decided to do something like this. Maybe even Shock has done that with Nevix. I would not be surprised if this is the case for most, maybe all, or at least some teams, because Sigma is incredibly strong. Philadelphia Fusion, I feel they are a very meta team. They play very much what is generally considered the best composition. Not a lot of cheese, not a lot of fancy stuff. It's pretty basic, but it's usually pretty solid, at least in DPS metas. So yeah, I'd be surprised if Philadelphia moves outside of the meta at all. Guangzhou Charge, I expect mainly meta comes from them as well. I expect a lot of Symmetra. Seoul Dynasty, I have no idea what to expect. They have solid players, but not on the right heroes, I feel. So I think Seoul Dynasty might be one of the teams we see underperform heavily in this meta. Same for London Spitfire. They have solid players. Prophet probably one of, if not the best player in the league. Really hyped up player, I know. But I think he's really, really good. He's probably the best DPS player. I wouldn't say the best player. I think the best player in the league is Moth, but again, we'll get to that later. So I think these four teams with Charge, Fusion, Striker, and Hunters has very big upset potential. Chengdu and Shanghai because they might bring out something different. And these heroes that have been buffed and are really, really good into certain parts of the composition which we think will be meta, they're really good against. So I think Shanghai and Hunters, especially those two, have a big chance of upsetting the better teams by playing these Doomfist compositions. Seoul Dynasty and London Spitfire, I think, will underperform quite heavily because the meta doesn't seem to fit them. They are not historically good at quick meta changes. I think they need to find their own thing, or they will fall to the side a bit. Fusion and Charge, I expect them to stay in the 9th and 10th slot. Maybe Fusion was up one, Charge down one. But I expect them to perform as expected. They are pretty good at playing meta, their players are good, they generally play the commonly agreed upon best strategy. So yeah. So here's where it gets interesting, because of these playoffs cutoffs, from 6th till 1st, I see 3 teams which I would very much expect to pull out some shenanigans. But we'll start with the ones I think will not do that. Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign, super solid team. They are good at grouping together, they seem very disciplined when they're playing, and they're really good at the meta heroes. So I think that's going to be a meta team, super consistent, probably top 3 for playoffs. New York Excelsior, I think is going to underperform. Choking in playoffs, that's an NYXL thing. It's not something new. We are very used to it at this point. But I also think that they're not good at adapting to meta changes, and with a new hero being added, one hero being reworked, a fundamental change in ult economy was going to be too much for New York to adapt to. And also with Zenyatta moving out of the meta, I think, Jonak is not going to have the same value, and they're not going to be able to play that style that New York is famous for. Titans. Titans is very weird, and I think it's going to matter which players they put in, because in their last series, they played a lot of Haxel on Mei, which didn't really work out for them. So I think it's a matter of, are they going to play their own thing and have Haxel in? Are they going to play Genji comps? Are they going to play Hard Dive? Are they going to play Genji Doomfist? I think that's a possibility, but if they're going to play Mei, I would like to not see Haxel play, because he's been underperforming on the hero quite significantly. So let's move to the 3 teams that I expect a lot out of in playoffs. Gladiators. Gladiators is known for always bringing out these weird compositions, which no one else really plays, and these weird macro strategies, and doing strange stuff to win matches. They're kind of the cheese team who makes generally agreed upon good compositions, but with cheesy plays, which I absolutely love. I think we might see some Bastion stuff out of them. I think Bastion is underplayed. Now that you have 2 shields, and you have Symmetra in the meta, which it sounds strange, but you can now use high ground completely differently. Like on maps such as King's Row, you're able to set up your Bastion behind the enemy team with a Sigma shield, and you can set up your team on point you have incredibly good cycle. I think we might see some Bastion stuff. I think we might see a lot of cheese. And I 100% think they're going to be kind of meta-ish, but different. Which is why I really, really like watching the Gladiators play. They are playing the meta, but their own style of the meta, which they always have done. So, San Francisco Shock, by far the best team at playing Doomfist in the league. Dragons was good at the triple DPS, but all over Doomfist play, San Francisco Shock is mile beyond anyone else. If we are going to see the dive comp with Doomfist, we are 100% going to see it from the Shock. They have incredible discipline. They are so good at punishing enemy tanks. They don't overextend. They set up their fights. They don't overpeak. They don't get picked between fights. It's a super disciplined team, which is very much needed for this composition in this meta, because there's so rarely a reason for you to peak unless you're hard engaging. And then for the other team, I think could also play the dive comp is Spark. Why would you not play Winston when you have Gushue? Winston is super underrated, I think, and people are just not looking at him. He's really good into Sigma. Sigma, 400 HP, no armor, super diveable target. Proper setups, you can one-shot him every single fight when you go in. And also, remember, Doomfist and Winston damage cannot be blocked by his bionic, by his eating, his shift ability. So I think Winston is a super not looked at hero, which should be looked at more than he is. So my prediction is Shock winning, unsurprisingly, and probably Spark placing second. After that, I think it would be decided between either the best meta teams, which is going to be Atlanta Reign, Vancouver Titans, depending on who they put in, and potentially, I think Charge could do some good stuff. When it comes to everyone else and placements, it's going to be very much how good our teams at dealing with Shanghai Dragons and Chengdu Hunters. These teams could just rip through the brackets, I think, with playing Faraddoom, playing their own style, doing their own thing, being hard to deal with, being Chengdu and being Chinese teams. So it's going to be a super interesting playoffs. I think people are sleeping a lot on this patch, and being, double shield is going to be the same thing, just more shields, boring meta. But there are options to play that could be viable. So don't sleep on this playoffs yet, because it could still be really, really good. That's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider subscribing and put a like on the video. I do stream on Twitch 4 days a week, so if you are interested in having your own VOD reviewed or watching weekly OWL reviews, I'll be putting a link to that in the description below. But other than that, I'll see you guys again later. Hopefully, new video beginning of next week.